And I think when I turned 25, I was like, oh my God, like my 20s are
It's
flying
time.
by. Yeah. I'm like, now's the time. I keep telling myself, oh, you'll do it later. You'll go back and do this later. You'll do that later. And it's like, no, you need to do it now. Cause if I just keep telling myself later, 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 before you know it, you're never going to do it. And then you're going to
Yeah.
think back and be like, well, why didn't I?
That was this week's guest, Hannah Ruzicka. Hannah is a 25-year-old from Oceanside, California, who is early on in her career in project management and serves in the National Guard, where she's been serving for 7+ years. On this week's episode of I Don't Know About You, Hannah and I dive into the advice that she wishes that she would have had throughout her journey, starting with the National Guard, balancing college, moving to California in the middle of COVID, and entering her career. Hannah is returning to I Don't Know About You, since she was one of the original hosts with me back in 2021 during the original version of the show. No matter where you are in life, whether it's early career, further along, or still figuring it out, I think Hannah's advice is a really important reminder for us all. I'm Kyle Cuzymore, and this is I Don't Know About You.
Well, I don't know about you, Hannah.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Or should I say welcome back? Because for those that don't know, Hannah and I had a podcast also called I Don't Know About You. This is technically a reboot of, not to get too technical, but we did that back in 2021. So good to be recording with you again. So
It
much
is
fun.
good. It is good.
So for our audience, maybe just give like a quick rundown. Like, who is Hannah?
Yes, obviously I'm Hannah. I live in California. I'm not originally from California, but I live in California, and I've been in the National Guard, Army National Guard, for around 7 years now. And I think that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, no, I think like good like context for everyone to have. So before I met you, I actually didn't know really anything about the National Guard, and definitely like learned a lot about like the National Guard and also like how the military works. It's, an important part of our government, but it's just kind of a black hole for me and I think a lot of other people as well. But maybe could you just give a quick rundown of like your role in the National Guard? I know that you're also a military spouse, so that's also like an added
Yes.
element here. And what actually like drew you into the National Guard originally?
Yeah, my role right now is my official title is I'm a transport operator. So I drive trucks essentially, but we do a lot more than that. Lots of logistical planning. I also do a lot of planning with ammunition for different companies and stuff like that. But what initially drew me to the National Guard was honestly, I just didn't think never thought I could do it, never thought about it. And then one day I just decided, hey, maybe this would be a cool thing to do. So I reached out to a recruiter, which is usually the other way around. Usually the recruiter is trying to sell you on the idea, but I had already sold myself on the idea. So I went to a recruiter, and then he still gave me the rundown of the National Guard. And there were so many things I didn't know. And I think it really started to draw me in more with the free college, and which is not the only reason why I joined, but free college is nice. The benefits, being able to be a civilian, but also do military things on the other side. And that just really drew me into it. I felt like I wanted to have a civilian career, but I also was really drawn to the military itself, so I could get the best of both worlds. And then also with it being state and federal, I get to be with the Army, but I also get to help my state when there's natural disasters or different things like that.
Yeah, totally. Also, thank you so much for your most recent helping out our state in California. Hannah actually was a part of the crew that helped out with the LA wildfires. So really important work, and California thanks you. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. Thank you. California was so nice to all of us.
So going back a little bit, so you mentioned like you reached out to the recruiter. You were 17 at the time, 18?
17, yeah.
Wow. And like kind of a big decision to make like at 17. Tell me, maybe like let's go back to like when you were in high school and you made the decision to enlist. What was the like thought process like? How did like everyone around you, like tell me the story of like when you like really first got started here.
Yeah. Again, like I said, I never initially I had never brought it up to people. It wasn't something I really aspired to do all throughout my childhood or into high school. It was something out of the blue that I just thought was like, ooh, that'd be cool. And then also, I have lots of different people in my life, like telling me, hey, you need to start figuring out what you're going to do after high school. And as a 17-year-old, that can be a lot of pressure. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll just do the guard, because then I don't really have to worry. I can still go to college, and it will just make it look like I'm doing something, so people don't think don't have it figured out, because I really didn't have it figured out. So once I joined or told my parents or friends, everybody was pretty surprised, because I had never brought it up to anybody that, hey, this is something I might want to do. It was just one day I was like, I think I'm going to do it. And I sought out a recruiter and I did it. But I think the main thing was that it was just, I was so close to graduation, but still didn't know what I wanted to do. And I knew I had to go to college, but I didn't know how I was going to do that. Right. So I was like,
Sure.
maybe this will help me get to that point.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions, I'm sure, like about the National Guard. I'm sure like when people like ask you questions, like I'm sure, at least like for me, there were a lot of things that I just didn't quite understand, but like maybe walk me through like what does the day-to-day look like as someone that's in the National Guard?
Yeah, so in the National Guard, you are what people like to call a weekend warrior. So essentially 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer for training. Once you get in, you will quickly realize that that is not always the case. Recruiters really try and tell you 2 days a month and 2 weeks in the summer. But it can, depending on where you're at in the years, it can be more than that, as we've seen also with state activations and different things. So honestly, day to day, it's just really different depending on what training's coming up, also what kind of things we're going to be responding to, such as like the fires, floods, different things like that. We do a lot of just training on the weekends, a lot of admin stuff, but it's all in preparation for those things, like if we do ever have to get activated to different things like that.
But you still have like a 9 to 5, and like
Yeah.
for all intents and
Sorry.
purposes,
Yes.
like you like
Yeah.
still have like a 9 to 5, like you still
Yep.
like are a
So
normal civilian with like this additional like,
yes. So besides the weekend a month or whatever your unit's schedule is, right? Usually it's around 1 week in a month, maybe give or take. Aside from that, besides those 2 days, 3 days on the weekend, you are a normal civilian. You work a 9 to 5, you go to school, you do all of that. And so it's just those allotted days that you are in the military. You're always in the
for sure.
military. We still all need to like present ourselves as such, but you're a civilian when you're not in uniform.
One thing that you said earlier, and I think we're going to like really dive into. So you mentioned like this pressure of you were 17, you knew that you wanted to go to college, but you weren't quite sure like how to like make that work. And I think like a lot of people feel that. Do you want to talk about like the pressures that you like were feeling, and like maybe pressures that felt different, like for us, like growing up Gen Z and like our generation, like what were some of those pressures like in the transition to adulthood? Like, especially like in those like moments, like when you're 17, like trying to figure it all out.
Right. Yeah. Going back to when you're 17, the whole, at least even all through high school, at least in my experience, it was you need to get good grades so you can get into a new school. You need to get a good ACT score so you can get into a good school. It was all about you need to get into a new school. You need to know what you're doing. People would be like, oh, well, what are you going to school for? I didn't know, like I originally had thought that I knew what I wanted to go to school for.
And what did you think you wanted to go for also?
I did a year of apparel merchandising and design. So I went into it thinking, all through high school that this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. And quickly after a year, I decided that wasn't what I was going to do. But again, I was just forced to make that decision so early on in life that I didn't even know if that was something I was going to like. Yes, it was my passion at that time, but I was so young and things changed. So it was a lot of just trying to figure out what you're going to do. And if I'm going to go to a 4-year university and spend all this money, I want to do it in something that I'm going to enjoy doing the rest of my life. But that's not how it works, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on high schoolers to know what they're going to do before they graduate. But being a 17-year-old and knowing what you want to do the rest of your life it doesn't work like that. For some people, it does. My brother, it worked for him. He always knew what he wanted to do, and he's doing it, and he's doing great at it and loves it. But I feel like that's such a small percentage of high schoolers that feel that, or they feel like they know what they're going to do, and then they get there and it's just not what they expected.
Totally. When you were going to school for fashion apparel design and you knew that it wasn't the right fit, what did that feel like in that moment?
I felt lost again and very stressed, because I had already spent a year of school doing something and it was essentially going to go all to waste. And what had actually put me off from it was, I remember a professor had told me, I was in a design class, and the professor had stated how, well, in this field, the turnover rate in this career is really high because everybody's looking for the next newest creative idea and all of this. So holding a job is really hard. Because my mind had been wired like this at such a young age, I was like, well, I need a job that's stable and doesn't have a high turnover, so I can't do this anymore. And so then I went to my advisor, and because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. What do I do now? I just know I need to do something. And so, as all advisors usually do, if you don't know what you're going to do, get a business degree, right? Business will cover anything. You can get any job in business. So I decided, all right, I guess, I can maybe start my own fashion company in business, and then I won't ever have to worry about losing my job. But again, it's something that they just tell you is a Band-Aid and a cure-all for everything, but it's not always like that.
I mean, we can go on and on about that, because I feel like I was told the exact same thing. Straight out of high school, I wanted to be a photographer, filmmaker, use cameras and capture stuff. And it was either you go to NYU and move to New York and you become a filmmaker, or you go to USC, or
Right.
But that didn't feel achievable,
Yeah.
So it was okay, well then business for sure.
It's
for sure.
I feel like it. Yeah, and I feel like even in high school, people would tell you, "Oh, if you don't know what to do, just do business, because you can do anything in business. You can get any job. It keeps your doors open." So for me, I was like, great idea. Guess I'll be doing business, even though I absolutely hate numbers.
Right. Because
Hate
a big
math.
part of that is, all the admin things.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I fully relate to that. So, thinking back, for everyone's context, Hannah and I actually knew each other during this era of our lives. So it's fun to look back, go down memory lane, all the things.
Yes.
But looking back, obviously you've done significant things with your life. I think you're one of the most badass people that I know, Hannah.
Oh, thank you.
Not many people could go and just fight fires, and it's just oh yeah, no, it's chill. And just I know firsthand, moving to a place like California, there is a lot that goes into being able to process and be mature enough for a move like that. But looking back to this time, when we were 17, 18, making these decisions, if you could go back, what do you miss about that time in your life?
Yeah, I miss the freedom of, we would work part-time jobs here and there when we had them, and we didn't quit them on a on a whim, or just, all we had to do was go to school, and you just had a lot more freedom and time to do different things. And I really miss from our high school time was the creativity. Every day after school, we were going out, we were doing something creative, we were going out in nature. And that's something that I truly miss about that time. And I wish I didn't take it for granted as much. But yeah, I just really miss being creative and thinking outside the box, doing crazy adventures and different things like that. It's really easy to get wrapped up in life and not do those things anymore.
No, for sure. And I totally relate to that. Part of starting this podcast was actually I wanted to do all this creative stuff again. And yeah, I think you actually put it really well. I feel I took obviously you can't live in that world forever. but like
No.
I think I didn't take advantage enough of like that time, and I took it for granted.
Exactly.
What advice would you give yourself? Like if you had to if you could talk to 17-year-old Hannah making these decisions before everything happened, before COVID, before moving to California, before joining the Guard, like what advice would you give yourself?
To be more confident and take more risks and be okay with being uncomfortable. I think that's the biggest thing. And I still to this day have to be like, it's okay to be uncomfortable because the most growth comes from being uncomfortable.
Totally.
But I think that's something that if I were to go back, I would really, really try and put that through my brain and hopefully maybe I'd make different. Well, I don't want to say that because, everything happens for a reason, but
For sure.
yeah, definitely take risks, be okay with being uncomfortable and have more confidence in yourself for sure.
Yeah. I feel like that might surprise some people with you would think that the National Guard is like kind of a risky thing. Like you're actively putting yourself at risk in some situations, but it's less of like the physical thing, right? It's more of like the mental and
Yeah.
directionally where you're going.
Oh,
kind of
most
thing.
definitely. I never thought of it as a risk, but I most definitely see why people think of it as a risk. But to me, at that time, or even now, I'm like, oh, that wasn't really much of anything. That was just something I did. But yeah, definitely more mentally than it is physically.
What do you think you would have done differently on your path?
I would never change joining the National Guard. I love the National Guard. I love what I do, but I would put a little bit more thought and effort into what job I chose within the National Guard, just because I didn't realize at that time that the job I was choosing then could affect the job that I was trying to get on my civilian side. And obviously, as a motor transport operator, it's not really in my realm of what I'm trying to do civilian career wise. So I was able to translate it in a certain way. I did have some help so that it could leverage my resume a little bit. But I feel like if I would have picked a job that correlated more with my aspirations, that it would have helped me more on my resume and civilian job, which again takes me back to I didn't know what I wanted to do at 17.
Yeah.
So how was I supposed to know? I was just like, okay, cool. Sounds good. I'll do that,
Do you want to also walk through what the process was like finding a job out of the military, out of going to college while you balance all this? Do you want to just walk through that? Because I think it was not what I expected anyway, as far as the process.
No, I think my path on life was a little different than most people. It did take me a little bit longer to graduate school. I did several state activations, federal mobilizations, so put my schooling back a little bit. And then also, unfortunately, we have 2 weeks of training in the summer. As a lot of people know, most internships are summer internships for college students. So I didn't unfortunately have to miss out on a few opportunities for internships. So when it came time to graduate, I had no experience in my field. I actually got a degree in business administration with an emphasis on project management. So my route was to go into project management. When it came to graduation time and finding a job, I found it very hard because I don't have any experience. I have the 4-year degree, but I don't have any experience within project management. And people who are familiar with project management, a lot of times employers want what's called a PMP, right? It's a project management certification. But to get your PMP, you have to have experience, a certain amount of experience to take the test to then become a project manager, a PMP certified.
And we hear this with so many different, whether it's project management for your example, but it's it's the classic, right now in a job shortage, especially because just a lot of knowledge work jobs, there's just a shortage of,
Yes.
Call it recession, call it whatever. It feels like it's always this catch-22 for especially people that just graduated or folks early in their career. It's you need a career to have, or you need experience to get a career. You need to have a career to it's just a cycle,
No, every job I went to apply for, I specifically put entry level I needed an entry level position, but then you'd click on it and it would go 1 to 3 years experience, 2 to 3 years experience.
I'm like, that's not
So
entry level, guys. Like, come
no.
on.
And so it was discouraging for a really long time because I was just like you said, you need experience to have a career, but you need a career to have experience. So I was just like, where is the middle ground here? And I think that's a big thing that's also sold to high schoolers. Oh, to get a good job, you need to get a degree, right? But the degree doesn't mean anything, especially now. They want degree with experience, or they want experience and degree is preferred, but you don't really have to have one. So I think it's sold to you as this, like, if you want to be successful in life, you need to go to school and you need to get in all this debt and then you'll get an amazing job. But it doesn't always work like that.
It's
Especially
like
if you
not
don't have the right
guaranteed.
connections. No,
Right.
it's not.
It's all connection based these days. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's who you know, and it's like, and obviously, like, we're generalizing a little bit.
Yes. No, yes,
Because,
we
like,
are.
I've also heard, like, I have a friend that graduated from USC, and it's like, I heard that basically, like, the USC alumni network is like crazy, like,
Mm-hmm.
insider. So it's like, obviously there are some examples of that, but then it was like, I remember when I like was applying for internships and like jobs and stuff, like, I remember there was one that like specifically like denied me because I didn't have a degree from like Harvard or Yale or Stanford, let alone I didn't have a degree. But
But
different story, different time. But it's like, in a market where everyone is searching for a job and there are so few jobs, like,
mm-hmm.
it's like almost impossible to like make movement. And like, obviously you found something now, but I've heard of so many
Yes.
people like around our age that have like not been able to find something,
No, and honestly, I'm very thankful because the military had actually given me the resources. Like, their mission is to help service members find jobs. So they actually really helped me and kind of put in a good word for me. And I was able to get connected with them, thankfully. And they really helped me leverage the job I'm in now, which is very much an entry level position. But at that point, that's all I wanted. I was
There's
like,
like
I just want to get
anything,
my foot
please.
in the door somewhere. Yes. I'm like, please. Like, I promise I'm a hard worker. Let me work for you. um, but it's really a big thing that it's unfortunate that
Yeah.
it's that hard for some people.
And it's like, it's unfortunate when it's hard for some people, but it's even more unfortunate when it's like
A
hard
lot
for
of people.
everyone. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like really good about my role right now, but like, I would not want to be looking for a job right now. Like,
No.
yeah.
No, I remember I had like an Airtable spreadsheet of all the jobs that I had applied for, all the jobs that I was wanting to apply for, and I applied for that spreadsheet is so full. And when I tell you, I didn't hear from one of them.
God.
Nothing, not even that we have decided to go with someone else. Thank you for your consideration.
Just
Whatever.
ghosting.
Just ghosting. So then it's like, did they even get my application? And I would go in and, some of them you can track and half of them didn't even get viewed. I was like, okay, I'm glad I took all my time.
Like, when it's like in the age of AI now, it's like your resume and your application go through like an AI screener that gives like a confidence score on like, that you actually make sense for this role before it's like anyone even looks at it. It's like, well then, yeah, no, I don't look good. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
GPT.
Exactly. So
One of the other things that you mentioned, like looking back, was like wanting to like make time for creativity. Like, we used to do like photography, like we would do like all sorts of like art stuff. Why don't you think you make the time right now?
I feel like I just got caught up in life. And I know that's such an awful excuse, but I got really stuck in I need to build my career. I need to have a career. I need to do it now and I need to do it well and I need to make money. As you know, living in California is not cheap. And we're very lucky with the military and everything, but it's still so expensive. So I was just, I'm like, I need to do school. I was working full time while I was in school. Then I graduated and I started working full time again. And now I work one full time job, but I work another job also on the weekends. And so I just stopped putting that. I stopped prioritizing the things that made me happy per se. I'm not saying my work doesn't make me happy, but my hobbies, the hobbies that made me happy, I kind of pushed them to the side because I was just in that, gotta make
Yeah.
money. I need to do good. I need to do something with my life. And I just got lost in it.
I think a lot of people go through that at some point.
Right.
Do you think your job, like right now, fulfills you like outside of finances?
Yes, on some days. I really love my job. I love the people I work with. I do still have customer service in there a little bit, and that can become a little mentally draining at times. And it's not necessarily where I want to stay. I'm really hoping to move up, and I feel like I'd be a lot more happy in a role that I work my way up to. This is wasn't where I thought I'd see myself graduating college in this role, but it ended up being really good. Like I said, I love the people I work with. I have gotten a lot of good experience there, and my job's super amazing about letting me shadow other jobs and doing all this and career progression. So I think that part keeps me fulfilled, that like
Sure.
they're there for me, and that I here at my company now, I feel like I have the potential to get where I want to be.
Yeah,
And everybody's got to start somewhere. So,
totally. I guess like another question that I've been thinking a lot about recently, and I know that we've chatted about it before, but like, do you think that your 9 to 5 needs to be a fulfilling job? Like, obviously, different generations, different career paths, like
mhm.
everything looks different regarding like all the different variables. But like, I look at like some past like family members and like other people that have like like a trades like job. And not saying that trades aren't fulfilling, but it's like they're not like bringing it home and like slacking at like 9 p.m. And like, anyway, but do you think that work ultimately needs to be the most fulfilling thing in your life?
For me, I would like work to be fulfilling just because you spend most of your life at work, right? You made a good point though that I see like my parents' generation and everything, and most of them are just fine working their 9 to 5 and coming home, and that's what they're done, and that's what they'll continue to do. But I think newer generations have this mindset of, life is super short, and spending 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, maybe even more at a job that you don't like, it can be mentally draining. So sometimes I do feel like some people are okay with that, and that's perfectly fine. But some people, I think, do need a fulfilling job just for their mental health. Essentially, I can't imagine going into work every day, keep thinking, "Oh, I have to go into work today,"
Yeah.
because again, even though the job is not my ultimate role that I want to be in, I'm never like, oh, I have to. I don't want to go into work. I'm miserable. Like I
Yeah.
usually am excited to go into work, see the people I work with, see the people around me there. Um, but it can be really mentally draining if you really just don't want to go.
You said something earlier about life's too short, and like Gen Z is like kind
Hmm.
of realized like maybe we aren't going to be able to afford a house. I mean, like here in California, obviously, depending on where you're at, Hannah's in like the San Diego metro, and then I'm in the Bay Area. But like
Hmm.
here, it's like a starter home is like 1 million to 2, like in some areas. Obviously, you can find some outliers, but like anything in like a desirable neighborhood, you're looking at like
Yes.
1 million. And like, I can't do that right now. Like, and I look to like my
No.
parents, like, who were able to like buy a house, like, right when they got married. And like, I think like
Hmm.
a lot of like folks in pasture things are just more affordable. And like, there's no secret around that. But like, how do you think like the way that young people are viewing like money and their relationship with money and work, like, how do you think that's changed, like for us and obviously into millennials, and like basically just like, how has it changed recently?
I think people just are more okay with thinking outside the box. And I think people realize that, again, like I said, life is really short when it comes down to it. And most people only live maybe until their 60s, 70s, 90s, if they're lucky, right? And the retirement age is about 60 years old, right?
And
So, I
going
mean,
up.
most people, and going up, yeah. And most people like work their entire lives and then only get to enjoy, if they make it to their retirement age, they really only get to enjoy it for a few years, if they're lucky, more. And I think people are starting to realize that like I I feel like years ago it was more work so that you don't have to, so you can be comfortable and not have to work anymore, right? Like they just were like, just get to 60 and you'll be good. But now I think people are realizing that it's a lot harder to get to 60. And even at 60, with the way things are looking, who knows if you'll even be able to retire at 60? How long are you going to be able to enjoy your life at 60? Are you still going to have your health? Are you still going to have all of these things that will help you enjoy that time, right? So I think younger generations are just more about be in the moment, and also that money is kind of ebbs and flows, I would say.
It's a fluid
And
thing.
it's a fluid thing. So they would much rather take that trip than put a down payment on a house,
Totally.
especially because housing prices are really expensive nowadays, but also just because I feel like the value in that has gone down. I feel like that people value experience and adventure more than they value like stability in a home. And not even stability. You can have stability, but it's not as much of you need to get married, have a family, buy a house, and that's like the goal. I feel like the goal has kind of gone away from that, and it's more just have fun while you're young and figure that out later.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna say this like with the caveat of I obviously am still saving for retirement. Like I contribute to a 401k and Roth and
Yes,
all
me
the
too.
things.
Yes.
But it's like, okay, if retirement isn't even guaranteed, then why wouldn't I go to Thailand now? Like why
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't I go to Cabo? Why wouldn't I go to Japan or Italy or wherever? Like,
Right.
I mean, the thing that I have seen like our generation do that like sometimes I'm like, is like the new cars. Like I saw a stat recently that was
Okay.
like the percentage of people that like have a car payment over $1,000 a month is just like dramatically increasing. Like I couldn't imagine that. Like I
No,
could barely
thank
do like a
you.
$400 one and be like okay with that. Cause I mean, I hate cars anyway. So it's like,
Yeah, that is insane. But I feel like people are more willing to spend more money on a car because of the fact that buying a house seems to just get further and further away for some people.
totally.
And it also depends on what area you are in. But everybody's seen that housing prices are going up. And not only that, but you have the interest, you have to put out a down payment. And I feel like a lot of people, a lot of younger people don't have as much in their savings as maybe people did years ago. Because again, they would rather, instead of putting money in the savings account, they want to go experience things, because you never know if you're going to be able to do that later on. And I like how you pointed out that we both still contribute to a
Yeah.
retirement, and it's very important to still do that. But I don't think it's like the end all be all. Like I would much rather be like, hey, let's spend a couple extra $1,000s to go on a trip and experience a trip. I just feel like there's a lot more value in that nowadays.
And also just like it's getting so expensive.
So
I mean,
expensive.
we could drill into the specifics of eggs, but like we don't need to do that right
Not the
now.
eggs. I haven't
Not
had
the
eggs in
eggs.
my house in weeks.
But just like, yeah, it's not even like cars or homes or interest rates or whatever. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
everything all at once, like right in like a moment where it feels like you should be laying the foundation, but it's like, but how? Like,
Yeah. And everything's just crazy up in the air. It's really hard.
yeah. I feel like we could like keep talking about this like forever, but shifting gears just a little bit, I'd love to hear just like how you feel like your personal perspective on like life, career, all the things has like changed. Like I want to break it into a couple different phases, but like
Okay.
first when you like entered the military, what do you think like a big like perspective shift like in that was?
Once I joined, that's when I started to figure out more of like, hey, the retirement things and the things you have to do in life when you become an adult. I actually learned a lot of that in the military. And then not only that, like choosing your career path and different things like that. And my perspective changed on life, I think, is I wouldn't, not necessarily negatively, but I really lost my creativity because I really got in this mindset, the military mindset. And so I kind
Totally.
of lost my creativity a little bit. And it was just hard to get it back after it and transition, because in the National Guard, you still go to like the same training as active duty and you're away for a while. So then coming back and having to transition. And then also that first year, you know, you have to, when you leave and then you come back, you leave and you come back, it's a big transition. So I kind of got to see both sides, and my perspective on life was really that life is short, and that I think I got a lot of advice in the military as well, as like everybody has their own path. And I think I, for a long time, compared myself to my peers on like, well, they're already getting their master's degree. I haven't even got my bachelor's degree, and different things like that. And when I first joined the military, I thought I had to go the same path as everybody else, right? And I think my first step to not doing that was almost joining the military. And that was kind of my way to be like, I'm not going to do what everybody else is going to do. But mentally, I still couldn't wrap my head around that
It's
like
exhausting
all
when
these,
you like go
yes,
against the
it's
grain. Like,
exactly. And it's very much like, I'm like, and I kept having to tell myself, you know, well, you've done XYZ and you've done all these other things, and that's why your path is just a little different. And you can't, just because someone else is doing what I would view at the time as better than me, you just have to think about, well, I did this, although it might not be what they're doing. It's just a different path, and it's still successful. You're still being successful. It's just not everybody has that same path. You know, it's not everybody fits into one mold, and it's not something you can compare. You just can't compare yourself to it. So
yeah,
that really changed my perspective on life. And it was really hard to grasp that, hey, you know, it's not that you're not behind in life. It's just you have a different path in life. So,
and like on that, do you think the National Guard is a good career path or a good life choice for a lot of people? And like, who is it
yeah,
for in the end?
right. I definitely, you know, it's not for everybody. I
You can't see
no
Soldier
career.
Kyle.
No, like it's not, and I don't want to ever sound like I'm like, you know, oh, it's an amazing thing and you need to join, because it's not for everybody. Even though I think it's an amazing thing, I love what I do. I love
It's
being there.
nuance.
It's, yes, I can't say it's going to be the same experience for you. Also, it depends on, you know, what unit you go to, your command, different things like that. There's a lot of different factors, but for me, I feel like it was a great choice. It opened a lot of opportunities for me. And then also, I don't have student debt, which is a great thing. And I love what I do, but I also don't think that's the case for everybody. You know, you really have to be okay with the military lifestyle and then also the transitioning. And it can be mentally draining and physically draining at the same time. And you have to know how to juggle all the different things, you know, school, military, job, and it can be a lot. But I think it's a great thing if people are thinking about it, something to explore. But make sure to, you know, do your research before getting into it, because it's not always for everybody.
So, same question. How do you think your perspective, like, overall shifted? But this time, like, instead of like the military, when you moved to California, and also take me back to like that time when you actually moved to California and like all the things, like, what actually shifted in your perspective, like moving from Iowa, where we grew up, to
Mm-hmm.
California?
Yeah. Um, First off, starting with my move, it was kind of crazy. I had a plan to move down here, and then COVID happened, and I just kind of got stuck and then stayed and never went back, right? But I think the biggest perspective is when people say you have a small town mindset. I mean, I think it rings true in certain circumstances, you know, like a lot of people want to stay in the small town, have a nice job in the small town, do that, and that's fine. But when I moved to California, I realized like how many different lifestyles and careers and different things there are. Like, it is just absolutely crazy how there's so many different people here. You have like people who surf for a living, people who work, you know, at the coffee shop for a living, people who do art murals for a living. It's just all over. And you do see that in Iowa too as well. But I feel like here it's just to a whole new magnitude, right? And also just the laid back lifestyle. Like everybody,
Yeah.
like, not in traffic, because traffic is awful.
Well, yeah.
But you know, you go to the beach and it's like you can go to a beach on a Monday at 12 o'clock and there will be a lot of people there. And most of the time, you know, growing up in Iowa, you'd be like, oh, it's a weekday in the afternoon. Nobody's going to be out. It's not going to be busy. Here, it's busy all the time. People are
It's
always
like,
out.
I'm a work from home person, and I'm always like, don't these people have jobs? Why is this restaurant busy? It's Tuesday at noon. But
Yeah.
it's like, there's so many like work from home people and just like people
Oh,
with different
yes.
lifestyles. Like Sylvia, who's going to be a guest in one of the next couple episodes. So she's from Peru originally. And she said that when she moved to Los Angeles, she didn't realize that like Instagram could be a job. It's not just an app. Like, let alone like influencers, but like you could work for Instagram, like for
Instagram.
example. Like she was like, that's just like so cool. And like I feel like, yeah, that wasn't really on my radar like before, like,
No,
but it's an option,
it is. Yeah. And there were so many cool, like, little niche positions you can get here. And especially within social media or work for home, it's a big market out here. I mean, not right now. I mean, any type of job is kind of hard to get. But in addition to that, I just feel like people are just outside all the time. Like,
Yeah, because
because I
it's
mean, the
not
weather.
-30.
No, exactly. That is exactly it. And even when it's like chilly, getting into the 60s, that's chilly in my opinion. But people are still out. They're surfing, they're going to the beach, they're riding bicycles all over. And it's just my perspective on life changed a little bit too, because I feel like it just broadened my perspective. I always said, I love my hometown. I love my hometown. My whole family's there. But when I grew up there, I was like, I just feel like I'm stuck in this box. Like, I just need to get out of this box. And, and a lot of people be like, oh, well, once you leave, you'll come back. They'll leave and come back. But for me, it was like, I felt like confined to this one
Same.
space. And I didn't always feel like I fit in, or that like there was anything big for me there, besides my family and my friends. It was the only thing really that would hold me there.
You have like too big of a personality and like worldview to like, not that you couldn't move back, because
No,
like you'd make the pond bigger if we're gonna use that
right.
analogy. But like, I don't know, I feel the same way. It's like, it feels like just a completely different world. Like they're
It is.
worlds apart.
Yes. And not people, some people thrive on that, and some people love that, and they see success being there, and like that's where they want to be. But and I love going home, and I love visiting, and there are
Sure.
certain things that I miss about being there, but it's just, I'm like, gosh, there's so much here that I got the desert there, I got the mountains, I got the beach, the ocean, I can go up north and see you, like
Just a
go to the
1 hour flight, and you could
redwoods.
be like in the redwoods, wine
Exactly.
country. Like the beaches up here are just different. Like,
Yep,
or
you can
like
drive 4 hours to
Tahoe.
Vegas. Yeah, it's
Right.
like, I'm like,
She's a California girl now.
yes, I am. But I just don't feel like I'm in a box anymore.
I feel that. Like, it's +1 to everything.
Yep.
I want to ask the same perspective question one last time. How do you feel like your transition from school to the working world and entering the workforce, like, how did that actually change your perspective? Or like going through like the job search process, like given all the things that we had talked about before?
Yeah. I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, but I thought, hey, I'm getting the 4-year degree that everybody wanted me to get. So I'm going to get a great job right out of college, and it's going to be amazing and all of these things. And I quickly found out it was different, that was not
Yeah.
the case.
Because it feels like it was almost promised to us. Like, it feels like it was almost promised.
Almost like, you have to go to school, you have to get a degree, that's how you're going to get a good job. And then it's
It'll
all
fall
of a
in your
sudden
lap.
nobody wants me. Yeah. And it's very
Yeah.
discouraging, because then at that point too, you're like, what am I doing wrong? Why doesn't anybody want to hire me? Am I not worth it to somebody? But again, I mean, you can only put so much on your resume, and you have to look good on paper. And also translating your military career into civilian career. Because for me, most of my experience was in the military. By the time I graduated school, I had been in the military for 5 years, a little over 5 years. And, I'd have other jobs. Like, I had my full-time job at a restaurant, but I wasn't trying to stay in the restaurant business. So I mean, besides customer service, there wasn't much there. And then all my part-time jobs that I worked through high school and into college and different things like that. But my biggest one and my longest holding job was the military. So trying to translate the military onto a civilian resume in a way that civilians will find
They'll just
valuable
understand. Yeah.
And understand. It was very hard. And again, thankfully, after searching for a long time, I had someone actually help me to translate it and just like word it in a way that is more understandable to the outside world, and might have helped me get the job. I mean, now I don't really know, but that was like a big eye opener for me. Is like, I just spent my like 5 years getting this degree, because it didn't take me 4 years. It took me a little over 5.
It happens. Like,
but and now I can't get a job I want. Like, this is crazy.
I'm going to ask something really blunt and obviously like generalizing a bit, but I'm just going to say it. Is the 4-year degree a trap? Like, is it?
Yes, I believe it is a trap. And there's some careers that I do feel you need a degree, like, a doctor or things like that, because you don't just want to be not knowing what you're doing in like a surgery. Yeah. But I do feel like it is a trap, because I feel like it's sold to young kids like, you have to get a degree, and degrees are expensive. And I feel like the job market is always changing. Like a few years ago, or maybe more than a few, it was like an associate's degree was like good enough. But then now it's like a 4-year degree. And then even now it's like, oh, a master's degree is like what a lot of people are looking for. So I feel like it's always changing. And then not only that, but you spend so much money to go to these schools, and then when you graduate, you spend a lot of money to go to these schools so you can get a good job, and then you get this good job, and most of your salary is going to paying off your student debt.
Right. When they just wanted experience in the end anyway. Like, they just wanted experience. Like, that's actually what they want.
And then you go to apply for a job, and it's like, oh, we have this degree, but you don't have any experience, so we would rather take the person with experience over you. And so I do feel like it isn't a trap in a way. And some people love college, and they wholeheartedly want to go back.
Totally.
Not me. I will probably go get my master's degree. Also, I don't have to pay for it, so it makes it a little different.
It's completely different.
Yeah. So I'm like, but if I were to have to go into all the debt that comes with college, I think it would be a lot different story than, it's a lot easier when you don't have to pay for it. But yes, I do think it's a trap, and I think it's sold to kids as the gateway to being successful.
It was like bachelor's degree or else,
Yes, or else you're not going to make it in this world. It's like, degree experience is so much more valuable. And I feel like you're almost an example of that, because right out of high school, you got a pretty good job, and, you didn't have a degree, but you had experience in what you were doing. And I think that helped to leverage you a lot. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Little old me.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But, and then I was almost like, why didn't I just do that? Like, are you kidding me? Like, straight out of high school, like, for most people, you were in a really good position. Right?
I mean, yeah.
What?
I'm trying to be humble, but like, yeah, I mean, you're right. Like,
you were.
I need to own it.
Kyle's kind of a badass too. Okay, guys.
This is about you. This is about you, not me.
No, but you're a great example of the 4-year degree being a trap, because I'm over here with a 4-year degree, not really doing much, and you were how old? 19, working for this huge company. Yeah. And they saw your experience and were like, okay, let's take a chance on him, and if I were to apply for that position with no experience, it wouldn't matter.
But if y'all want to hear more on that story, leave a comment on either Instagram or on Spotify or YouTube or wherever, and let us know, because we'd love to hear what you all think. Would be happy to make that episode. But in conclusion, the 4-year degree is kind of a trap. Obviously, it works for some people. And like, the more and more that I hear about the social aspects of it, when people like actually found community and had times to like explore their interests, like, that part, I do feel like I missed out. Like having like 4 years to like really learn about like whatever I wanted to learn about, not
Right.
necessarily for career, but like the promise of like, this is the gold ticket to like just
Mm-hmm.
get a good job and you're going to automatically like make six figures and blah, 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 blah. Like, no, like
No.
that's just not how it works.
Yeah, and if you do end up going to school, and to get a degree, I would really stress like get those internships, or if you don't have time for an internship, because I understand, it's also school's a lot. So to have an internship on top of it is kind of a
Yeah.
feat for most people. So I would just, volunteer, even be like, hey, I can give you 2 hours a day. Like I just need some experience. Just try and get that experience while you're getting that degree, because I feel like that'll put you ahead in the end. And then maybe you won't have the trouble of finding a job because you'll have that experience and the degree already.
Yeah. I think that's like really good advice for,
Mhm.
younger folks looking to like figure it out that
Yeah.
are still early in their journeys. But so shifting gears a little bit. So we talked about like, creativity like was a big thing that you were
Mhm.
missing and you really wish that you would have like held on to it. How do you want to like start infusing creativity and like finding time for your passions? Like we used to do like
Mhm.
photography, like you were doing fashion for a bit. Like
Yeah.
how do you want to like start infusing some of just like what makes Hannah so badass outside of the whole like, firefighting things? Like
Yeah.
how do you want to like start finding time for that?
Yeah. This is very cliche, but I'm like 2025 is my year. I am going to dip into my creativity and do all this.
It
So,
is.
and for you as well. I mean, look at us. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna try and put more value on my time that I have off, and really give myself a little bit more time. Like I said, I work 2 jobs and then I also have the guard, so it can be a lot and it can be hard to set aside time. So I'm really trying to focus on myself more. And I bought a new sewing machine, so I'm gonna try. I'm really wanting to start working on some clothes again. Just bought a new camera, and I think taking valuing my downtime a little bit more, because even when I do have downtime, I just am so exhausted that I just want to sleep and veg
Right.
out and not do anything. But at the end of the day, that doesn't fulfill me. So I'm really going to try on when I do have that time off, I'm going to try and take more time off for myself. And when I do have that time, to take advantage of it and, go outside, take some pictures. And yeah, that's my plan. Actually finding the time, not saying I'm going to find the time, but actually finding
It's
the
the
time to
hardest
do it.
part. Like it's what I found like really helpful recently with like the podcast project and other creative
Mm-hmm.
endeavors was it was like, yeah, I could talk about it like I'll even just be really upfront with the audience. Like I talked about restarting this podcast for I seriously talked about it for a month, but had been talking about it for like a year before then.
Right.
And at a certain point, like I was just like, I need to just start. Like, there's a
You
YouTuber that
just
I
got to
watch
do
that
it.
like has a 5 minute rule, is what she calls it, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
she sets a timer for 5 minutes and just like she'll only do it for 5 minutes is like what's required. But usually after the 5 minute
Mm-hmm.
timer, you just like you're gonna keep doing it. That could
Yeah.
like apply to like being too scared to like start a new project or something that you don't want to do, like vacuuming. Like, oh, I'll only vacuum for 5 minutes and then you'll end up
Yeah.
finishing the whole house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like starting and like making sure that you have like sacred time for it is like a really good plan.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
What's something that scares you, but you know that you need to start doing?
I really need to put myself out there and start valuing myself a lot more and learning to sometimes say no. Saying no is okay sometimes, like if it's too much, it's
100%.
too much. But I also really need to start putting myself out there and take my own advice of being okay with being uncomfortable. I'm really hoping to have a career change within the military, and I really want to, like I said, build myself up in my company. And to do that, I need to put myself out there and be honest with people and tell people what my goals are. And because most of the time, they're going to help you reach your goals. And if you don't tell anybody else about them or anything like that, it's nobody's going to know and nobody's going to help you get
Yeah.
to that point. So really, I just need to take the step, be okay with being uncomfortable, and just do what I really want to do. I've been comfortable for a long time, just working, not really doing it, being creative or anything. I just do my 9 to 5, and that's about it, and work my other job in the military. And so I became very comfortable, and I think it's time to get uncomfortable, because that's when the biggest changes are going to happen, the best changes. So,
and like, we're only in our 20s for so long. Like,
exactly.
It's time. Like, I feel like it was always like, oh, your 20s are for like figuring out and being messy and doing the hard stuff. And it's like, it's hard to remember, like, oh shit, it's like right now that we have to be doing that.
Yes, exactly. And I think when I turned 25, I was like, oh my God, like my 20s are flying by. Yeah. I'm like, now's the time. I keep telling myself, oh, you'll do it later. You'll go back and do this later. You'll do that later. And it's like, no, you need to do it now. Because if I just keep telling myself later, 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 before you know it, you're never going to do it. And then you're going to think back and be like, well, why didn't I, or what would have happened if I did that? So I just need to start being uncomfortable, and, as most people in their 20s, like, take advantage of your 20s. This is the prime time for you to make mistakes and for you to figure out life. Honestly, you can be figured out life until you're 30. I don't know if anybody ever really figures out life.
No one hasn't figured out. And if they do, they're lying.
Exactly. But your 20s is the time to make those mistakes, do those hard things, be uncomfortable. Because I'm always scared I'm going to get stuck, and then I'm going to be so comfortable that I just never fulfill what I want to do in life. And that's why I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little comfortable. I gotta change things up, because I don't want to get stuck here.
For sure. I think, like, one question I want to wrap today with: what risks do you want to start taking? You mentioned, like, you wish that, like, you were not, it's not that you're risk adverse, but like, what are some of the risks that you want to start taking? Like, since that is like the advice that you would have given your younger self.
Yeah, kind of going with the other question is, in the military, taking the risk to go to more schools and do more hard things that I really don't think I can do, but I can. I tell myself I can't, but I know I can. So I really want to take those risks on taking more opportunities in schools within the military, changing my career within the military, and then also my civilian career, taking those risks, like speaking up and saying, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to like shadow. This is who I want to talk to. And then also, just not career-wise at all, is taking the risk on meeting new people, talking to more people. Very much, if I know you, I'm like, we're awesome, but I'm not good around new people, and I don't ask many questions. I don't try and put myself out there. So I really want to try and put myself out there to meet new people, because people have so many amazing stories, and it's always good to hear those. And then traveling, taking the time for myself. I know that doesn't seem like a risk to a lot of people, but
making self-time, like it is, though.
It is to me, because I'm like, my job and everything, but you still need to take time for yourself. So I really want to do that, go on more adventures, and just put myself out there creatively. Like we were saying, that's, for me, the criticism kind of got to me back when we were being really creative. And so I think that's really what almost put me off from getting back into it, was because of the criticism. And even though, I might not put out there what I'm doing, it's the fact that I just need to get over that and take the risk and do something that I love, even if other people don't agree with it or don't think it's good or anything, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's something that I love doing, so I'm going to do it.
Hannah, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of I Don't Know About You. It was so good to have you back. And
thank you.
I feel
for
like
having
if
me.
I was like early in my 20s and like figuring it out, like I think that I would have like gained a lot. I always gain a lot from talking to you, but I like hope that this was like super helpful for the people that need to hear it,
Yeah, me too.
Thank you to our guest, Hannah Ruzicka, for being a part of this week's episode. And thank you for listening to I Don't Know About You. I Don't Know About You is written, edited, and produced by me, Kyle Cusimore, music by Chris Samperusi. You can get new episodes each Tuesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us for updates on Instagram, TikTok, and IDon'tKnowAboutYou.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.